right, Steve. This is round 2 of Landlord Balderdash. I don't want to remind you, but I am up 1-0. And just to remind our audience here, if they're tuning in for the first time, basically, Steve, I'm going to read him 2 stories, and these are landlord-tenant stories, and he has to guess which story is the real McCoy and which one is Landlord Balderdash.
This is Landlord Balderdash, the game where you guess which landlord story is real and which one is Balderdash.
You ready, Steve?
I'm ready for redemption here. I've got this one.
I have faith in you, all right?
All right.
All right. These are 2 quicker stories here today, all right?
Okay.
So, first story number 1. My father was a landlord. He rented to mainly high-income, wealthy people. They were good tenants, but extremely needy and helpless. The most ridiculous request he got was when they called complaining about all the junk mail they had been receiving at the home. They asked my dad if he could contact the post office to have the mail stop being delivered, even though the mail was addressed to them at their current address. They thought he was 1 part landlord, 1 part butler. All right, kind of ridiculous.
I love it. You know what? It highlights that sometimes a person can look perfect on paper and they're still a nightmare tenant. I mean, that's a great example right there. Okay.
Yeah, we do get those kind of complaints in the blog and things like that where it's just like, I can't believe like my tenant's complaining about this kind of thing.
Right. You run a background check. They look great. Credit's great. Income's great. You're like, oh, these people are awesome. That's where the verifications come in to be really important. You talk to another landlord that says, oh my God, these people were a nightmare. They called me to change light bulbs. I mean, everything you can imagine. And, the mail thing is as ridiculous as I've ever heard. So, all right, let's hear the second story.
All right, here's the second story. My father was a landlord. He rented to mainly lower income and hard luck people. He went to collect rent that was overdue one night, and the tenants were really drunk and beat him up. They hit him in the head with a 2x4 with a nail in it. He lost his eye.
Jesus. That's the story?
That's it.
I hope to God I hope that's the fake. I'm going to go with that one. Just because I genuinely hope that a landlord didn't end up losing his eye at the hands of a tenant. Maybe I've heard crazier, but I'm going to be the hopeful, optimistic person and say that it's the first case scenario there that is true. Second one is Balderdash.
Steve, I am happy to report that I am now 2 wins and you are 0.
This poor landlord lost his eye to a oh my God.
Oh my gosh. I read this on a forum online and I was just like, oh my gosh, I hope this isn't true. But, we're going based on what people have submitted as a true story.
Oh my God. Well, I could tell you this. Sometimes I feel terrible for our screeners. We've got live screeners here. They're all trained and certified in screening and FCRA and running background checks. And from time to time, these poor screeners will take phone calls from tenants, and we deal with the craziest tenants that will call in and tell a supposed horror story about a landlord or want us to look stuff up for them and all kinds of stuff. So it's not totally crazy to me that these tenants went to the landlord and said, can you contact the post office because I'm getting too much junk mail? I mean, it sounds ridiculous, but not far-fetched from what I've seen. But man, I can't believe the landlord got beat up and lost his eye. That's a terrible story. That's a tragedy.
Well, it is kind of one of those stories, though, that's pretty terrible, but you can learn something from it.
Yeah.
I mean, I think in the story it did say that he went one night,
don't
to collect
go
rent.
At night.
Yeah, don't go at night. Like, especially if you're having problems with that tenant already and you're going there on a Saturday night at 9 o'clock.
Yeah.
You know what? You might have a better chance of getting rent at noon on a Saturday and be a little safer about it. And if you're worried about collecting rent, figure out a safe way to do it. Don't show up necessarily at their home. I don't know if you have any ideas as far as that's concerned, but I feel like there's probably a safer way than just showing up and confronting them at their house.
Yeah, for sure. Avoid the temptation at times. You know what I mean? We always talk about landlords having to sort of remove that emotional element to what they're doing and to really look at this, being a landlord as like being a business. You know what I mean? You don't see JCPenney's going knocking down people's door because, they owe on their JCPenney's card. There's a process. There's a professional way to go about it. Landlords have to remember the same thing. I know plenty of landlords. I'm just picturing some of the landlords that we know out of like our local real estate group and stuff. And these are pretty scary guys. I wouldn't want that guy coming to my door and telling me I owe him money. So I get the temptation sometimes to be like, well, I'm just going to handle this. But you got to be safe. You got to think safe. In today's day and age, I've heard some horror stories about, posting stuff on Craigslist, and now you see a lot of women real estate agents not showing up alone to do a walkthrough or to do a showing because there has been some incidents of, women being raped or abducted. Real estate agents specifically, it's really scary stuff. So you just, unfortunately, we live in a day and age where you just got to be careful and think about that stuff. Think it through. If you got a problem tenant, for whatever reason, you have to show up. Don't go alone. Right? And maybe let the police department know what you're doing.
I think you brought up a good point there too. It's not just the collecting rent aspect of it. It's when you're showing your rental apartment, pre-screen the person.
Sure.
When you're talking to them on the phone, make sure that it's a good situation. If you're going to meet them in person, meet them in a public place perhaps before you're just showing them the rental. You want to get a good idea. I think one thing I read was somebody said that they always get the person's driver's license before they ever show them the rental, which unfortunately may not be a legal way of doing that now that I think of it. I know
in Buffalo, New York, it's not the legal way because there's a process to that. Remember that was if you want to go back and reference it, that goes back to our home episodes on the podcast that we dealt with that. And you can't get the copy of the driver's license until you've accepted their application and everything. It's crazy. But yeah, I mean, you got to get a good feeling for it. We tell landlords all the time, there is definitely some value to trusting your gut. Some landlords have a terrible gut feeling about stuff or their judgment's way off. But in cases like this, I mean, do what you can to protect yourself, trust your gut. If you get a bad vibe, don't go through with it.
Well, another thing you can do too is if it is something you're worried about, you can just do a open house showing for the rental property. That way, there's people coming and going, and you don't have to necessarily worry about just showing it to one person.
I'm a big fan of the open house for many reasons. Obviously, that's a good one right there. Another one is you get a house full of people interested in the same place. It creates this sense of competition. You're going to find that you get way more fully completed applications faster. The quality of the tenant tends to go up because there's that sense of competition that they, they're competing with all these other people that are in the house looking at the place as well. Not only that, it's a huge time saver. You're not showing up 4 days out of the week to show it to 4 different people. You do it all in one day. There's a lot of advantages. I'm a big fan of the open house. And then obviously, like you just brought up, the safety factor of people knowing there's going to be other people there, or at any moment someone else can possibly walk in, and I think that does protect the landlords a little bit there too.
Yeah, I've never done a open house scenario myself showing a rental, but it is something that I want to try out the next time I do it. And mainly for me is just that urgency. I know from a marketing perspective that anytime you can create anything with a sense of urgency and it's something that looks like other people are interested in, you're going to have more people want to submit their applications quicker. And the bigger the tenant pool that you have, the more applicants you have, the cream rises to the top. I know we've said that before in the past. Maybe doing that open house is a way to get, just more people to, this is a property I need. Like, look at everyone else. They like it. It's kind of like when clubs, like when I was back in my early 20s, they force people to stand outside and create a line, right?
Sure.
It gives you that impression that that's a desirable place.
Right. It's just, this place
you're kind of creating that line at your tenant rentals. So
right. Well, this one I'm sad to lose just because I feel terrible for the guy that got his eye poked out with a nail from a tenant. I mean, some scary stuff. So I don't feel good about this loss, Eric. Now I'm 0-2. It's even worse. But like I said, I feel worse for the landlord in this one.
Yeah, I feel bad for the landlord, but I got to admit I'm a little excited about being up 2-0.
All right, well, fine. Until next time, Eric's 2-0, and we'll see if I can get the next one.